Alright, so I have some notes here of our conversations in the past that I'd like you to elaborate on.
Yes, I covered the whole story. I worked at the Dispatch. I was a reporter and an editor at one point.
So, Sheila Kearns, she went missing 1996, Mount Rainier National Park.
Yes, Longmire,
Yeah.
the lower part, not up at Paradise. Although she had worked at Paradise, and she had just had a birthday. She had just turned 42. And jumping back a little bit, she had been in the Peace Corps in Africa, and she really got into drumming. Not the kind of drums you think of with rock and roll or anything, but different kinds of drums. And so they had a private drumming, a ranger at Paradise let her and her friends into the Jackson Center up there. And they had a drumming, and she called her mother in North Carolina and said, we're going to send you a video of my birthday and this drumming and all that happened. And that video has never, ever shown up, ever. Don't know what happened to it, but it was there.
Never.
Never. Nobody has ever found it. When I was talking to the head ranger at Longmire, I kept asking him about the person who let her into that place, because just anybody couldn't get in there after hours and do things. And this man let her in, and they had the video. I know there was a video because she called her mom and told her that. In fact, she called her mom every Sunday. And the video never showed up, and when I would ask about who let her in, they would say, well, maybe it was somebody from guest services, which is different than the National Park Service. And Sheila said it was a ranger. And Sheila had worked at Isle Royale up at the National Park, where it's mostly about wolves. She'd worked at Olympic and Rainier, and she knew the difference between a ranger and a guest services person, because they don't wear ranger outfits. So somebody let her in. They could never find the ranger, and they could never find the video. And we know that video existed, or Sheila wouldn't have told her mom to get ready to see it. It's gone. Nobody has ever found it, ever. So the murderer might have been in the video for all we know.
What do you think happened to that video?
I think somebody stuck it away and didn't want it seen. That's all. I mean, this is conjecture on my part, because I have no idea what really happened. But it was like, it just disappeared. It could still be in somebody's foot locker or stuck away, or maybe they destroyed it. It's hard to say, but we looked and looked for it. I mean, I pushed the Park Service over and over again trying to find out exactly who was the ranger who let her in, and they would just, well, we don't know, we've asked, nobody did it. But it seems like now, after 20 years, some people do know who did it, and I'm still working on that. I just found this out last night.
Do you think that there's a possibility that whoever did it killed a ranger and took his uniform and his keys and let her in there?
It's possible, but they never found another body. You know, if that were to happen, now I'm not big on conspiracy theories, you know, but she would have known anyway. She knew. She worked up there. She worked in the restaurant and in the gift shop up at Paradise, so she knew the people there. And the only reason she was at Longmire was because the tourist season was over, and so she had left and gone away for a few days, and then came back, and the woman who did all the hiring for guest services was a friend of mine. I've lost track of her. She's been gone for years. But she hired Sheila back for the off season, and Sheila was supposed to work in the museum. And she came back to the park. She had been gone for a couple days during a hiatus. Came back to the park, ate dinner at the Longmire restaurant in the back where the employees ate, talked to a man who worked there, he was one of the cooks, and left to go back to her place, which was right close. It was past the parking lot. At that time, it's all changed now. And she hadn't even unpacked. Her boxes were all still there and stuff. And she disappeared. Nobody saw her. Found out anything about her for another 7 months. So I don't know. If somebody had killed a ranger and stuff, I think they would have known that. God knows what happened to the video. But it was out there. Sheila and her mother were extremely close. And when her mom didn't hear from her, she started getting worried. But Sheila was supposed to go to work at Longmire at the museum. She was supposed to be there like at 8 in the morning or something in the morning after she disappeared. The morning that they found out she was gone. She probably went with somebody after she left the restaurant and came, and it would have to be somebody she knew really well and trusted, because she was very, very street smart, very. She'd been all over the world practically alone and never got in trouble. And somebody may have come up. I mean, this is just all what we kind of wonder. Maybe somebody that she trusted may have pulled up and said, hey, there's some baby something, baby foxes, baby bear, baby deer. There's something out there you want to go see. And she would have probably gotten into the vehicle and driven across the bridge over the Nisqually into the old campgrounds of Longmire. It's a big, beautiful place. And during the tourist season, a lot of people stayed in there, but the tourist season was over and it was empty. And that particular, if you see Longmire's here, and then there's a bridge over the river, and then there's this big place, this big old campground, and then there's a road that goes out of the park into Skate Creek Road, and it's like a maintenance road. But half the time back then, it wasn't locked, or sometimes the lock was broken, or everybody knew where the key was, so anybody could have taken her out of there. Because nobody that I've ever talked to believes she was killed there. They think she was taken out. God knows where she was taken, what happened to her, because somebody had to have known when the search was finally called off, because it went on for quite a while. Somebody had to have known that and probably brought her body back, because backing up a minute, her brother in California had been in the business of training dogs for like search and that kind of stuff and all kinds of things with dogs. And when they hadn't found her, he told her mother, Olive, that don't worry, once the dogs get out there, they'll find her. Nothing happened. So dogs smell blood. My dogs would have smelled it, and they're not even trained for it, dogs do. So there was no blood there. And there was no snow. Mount Rainier has its own weather station. And so the weather was like a little bit drizzly or something. It wasn't bad at all. So she walked out of the Longmire restaurant and was never seen again alive by any, except by the person who killed her, or persons, I don't know. But I'm sure it was a brutal death, because you don't get stabbed. You don't have 10% of your body, at least that's the way it was always reported to me. 10% of her remains were found, and it was all skeletal. And there were 3 stab marks on it, according to the FBI. So they knew the manner of death. Now, the park wouldn't tell me how she died, but her family did, because the FBI told them. So that's about where it has stood. One other little, a girl that married a nephew of mine, her sister was in like a young search group. They were young people, but they volunteered their time to search. And they went up there a while after Sheila's remains had been moved. It gets confusing because she was actually found in Lewis County, not Pierce County, because part of the park is in Lewis County, just a little bit. So her remains were sent to the Lewis County coroner, which was either in Centralia or Chehalis, And they were open like once or twice a week, and the poor family was so desperate to get her back. But they wouldn't do anything, and I kept calling them and pushing them. And then finally I threatened them. I said, I'm going to have to do a story on this, that you guys are just fiddling around with it. And they said, oh, well, we just don't have the manpower. But then they got it done, and they sent it to the FBI, where she laid in a box or a drawer for a year. I mean, it's a long, complicated story. But these search and rescue kids, or search kids, excuse me, they did that, you know, where you walk shoulder to shoulder across the grounds and stuff. And I was told by the sister who was going to get married to my nephew, that all those kids found was part of a finger bone. That's all that was left. The animals had taken whatever of her was left. They'd strewn her all over the place. So she's been up there for a long, long time, 20 years. 20 years and nothing. Nothing, very, very little publicity at all. I mean, just that's what surprised me. But, you know, it's not good for PR in a national park to have, you know, a murdered person. So that's as much I can tell you about that. But I know there's a video somewhere, or it was. It could be destroyed by now. But if somebody, sometimes people who do nasty things keep a souvenir. That's pretty well known. She also, the pictures that I've seen of her, she had a ring on, and her mother said she almost always wore that ring, but it wasn't in any of her stuff. So whether somebody took it or whether it was lost in the struggle, I don't know.
So you said her remains were all skeletal.
Mm.
Do you know if they were like completely bleach clean, or if they were, they still
had some flesh on it? Or,
yes.
I don't know. It had been so long. And of course in that area, after a while, there was a lot of snow and stuff like that. So I don't know. It was definitely just skeletal as far as I ever heard. But I don't know. I mean, they were pretty cagey about telling me stuff, like they wouldn't tell me how she died.
As the FBI usually are.
Well, this was the Park Service, but, and the FBI was a little more open with me, but they are pretty cagey too, you know, and here I am just a person from a small town asking about it, but you know, the FBI guy that I was talking to, he was very nice, and he even said, well, I guess the reason or he's pretty sure the reason they didn't do much about it with like the News Tribune and different TV stations is because bad PR for the park. You want people to come there, you don't want them to be scared. However, employees of the park were scared. I have a friend who lives in Eatonville and worked up there for like over 40 years. And she said people were really nervous. They were only to go in just to get their cars in their parking lots. They were supposed to go with the buddy system. They didn't want anybody, particularly women, out there walking around by themselves. It affected a lot of people, and there's still people who live in Eatonville who are still affected by it, you know, because they worked up there. A lot of mountain people live in town. And in fact, our Mount Rainier superintendent lives in Eatonville. But he wasn't there at the time. He wasn't the one. He wasn't involved at all, so he wouldn't know much. Although there's probably files up there somewhere. I'm sure there are.
So you said that they have buddy system, particularly with women.
Mm-hmm.
So were they suspecting that not only was it a murderer, but also a sexual predator?
Might be. It's possible. You don't know because they don't know. There wasn't enough of her to know whether she'd been raped or sexually abused in any way. They really don't know what happened to her. I said even, maybe 10 years ago, we went to a party with the Longmire family. They had invited us up there, and my husband talked to some rangers at that point, and they said, no, we've never believed she was killed here. Everybody believes she was taken out of the park, probably through that road that led State Creek, I think it is, State Creek, skate rink, and it's way out in the distant woods. And they think she was taken there, maybe kept for a while. Who knows? I mean, who knows? She was not a stupid woman. She really was streetwise. So she had to have trusted whoever she went with. And they could have said, hey, we got to go out of the park because I'm going to show you the baby cougars or something that would have attracted her. Because she was very into environmental issues and stuff like that. She was a beautiful woman. When you get home and see the emails, you'll see different pictures of her. I have no idea what happened to her, but we all have a feeling that it might not have been somebody who was just seasonal, killed her, and then left. Because rangers aren't seasonal. They don't just come for the minute and then leave like a lot of the people do. If it was a ranger, might not have been. Might have been somebody that she knew through somebody else, you know. And the FBI did not check. They have, you know, CCTV closed circuit watching, and they didn't see anybody come and go that looked unusual to them. She had gone a little bit with a man from Olympic. He was kind of crazy about her, but she wasn't crazy about him. People have told me who knew her said she was a man magnet. Men just fell all over themselves over her. She was beautiful, but she wasn't interested, you know, in that. She had been married once, but she wasn't interested in long-term relationships at that point in her life. So she left the guy in Olympic, and I think she had stayed with him right before she came back to Longmire. And he apparently, jumping back a minute, he had apparently been up at Paradise at some point to see her, and they were in an argument because somebody overheard them. Somebody was laying on a couch and they were arguing in a vestibule or something, but it wasn't a violent argument. And then he was out of the picture. Now I know the FBI did at least a couple of polygraphs on him, which I was told, not by the FBI, but I was told he passed with flying colors. And he also had an alibi that he was on the phone with his uncle or his brother or his dad or somebody. I'd have to look at my notes if I can ever find them. And so he had an alibi, which made it look like it might not have been him who did that, because he had kind of followed her to Rainier. But, you know, alibis can be faked. It's hard. People think it's easy, but it took, according to my FBI source, he did all the polygraphs for the whole region, different states and everything. He said, trust me, it's not as easy to fool as people think. They're really not. This guy passed him. So who knows? Now, the woman I talked to yesterday who lives at Ashford said she had seen him around the area, she said, around the time that she lived with her. But you can call her and talk to her because she can tell you more. I wasn't there. It's going through my filter, and I've got a lot of information that's swirling around my head. Any more questions?
So you said she was married.
She had been married once. She had been divorced long before this happened.
If it's not too deep of a question, why did they part ways?
You know what? I don't think he treated her right. I don't believe it was abuse. From what I can remember in conversations with her mom, it was like he just didn't. Apparently, maybe they just didn't like the right things or whatever. I could probably find out more about that through one of her friends that she was at Isle Royale with. But I don't even know that the marriage lasted all that long. I honestly don't know. She was an adventurous, you know. You figure she hiked across Chile by herself. that's kind of crazy. I mean, not crazy, but that's brave. She'd been to China, she'd been to Europe, she'd been all over the place, and then in Africa, where she was really involved in the Peace Corps, and that's where she got involved with the drumming. Now, they said that she knew shamans. She was interested in the shamans and what they did in the villages and stuff too. But none of them followed her over here, you know. It was somebody that has gotten away with murder. They might be around Eatonville. The chances are 50-50 or maybe better, but they're still around, that they're here, whoever it is. Because there's a couple of people that others have wondered about who live in the area. I don't know. It's a huge mystery, and it's been a mystery for now 20 years starting tomorrow. And I honestly didn't want to do the case because I just felt like it would pretty much consume me. I'm a little OCD about stuff like that too. Once I get hooked on it, I'm into it.
Yeah.
And the editor of the Dispatch at the time, whose name I won't mention on TV, he wasn't interested. He let her flyer just lay in his inbox while he did stories about sports. And finally I called, the woman is missing, and this was early on. I think at that point they had a $10,000 reward for her. And he just left it laying there, and finally I called my daughter and I said, Yachty, he's not doing anything about this story. It's a very important story. And she said, well, Mom, you take it over. I said, I don't want to do that. I just really don't. And she said, no, you'll have to. And she was my publisher, so, she was the boss. So then I took it over, and that's how I met her mother. The ranger who was up at Longmire, he was the head ranger in that part of the park in Longmire. He got me in touch with her brother, who then got me in touch with her mom. And then her mom and I became really good friends. For some of it's in that stuff I sent you. Really good friends. She was just the sweetest lady. She was from Manchester, England. And she was just a sweetheart. I felt so sorry for her because of what she was going through. Even the worst was not knowing, ever. And then when they finally found her, I'm going to go back a minute. They said that one of the reasons they didn't say that she was missing right away is because of the transient atmosphere up there with seasonals. They said sometimes people would come and work and then they just disappear and leave forever, and they just left. So they thought maybe she had done that. But the woman who hired her said that would have never happened. She said, I would have hired 50 Sheilas if I could. She was so responsible and she was so good with people, and they said she would have never done that. But my friend was gone in Puyallup visiting her mother over the weekend that this happened, when they all started realizing it. So she said that wouldn't have happened, but she wasn't there for anybody to talk to, and they just sort of, oh well, she didn't show up for work, so big deal. But eventually somebody checked her new place that she was going to live, and they were like portable sort of, I forget what they call them. There was a line of places where the staff lived.
They like connexes type?
I don't know what that is.
It's the big cargo boxes.
No, it wasn't like that. It was buildings, and whoever, there was she was in one of the buildings, and then there was a bathroom, and then there was another room, and she shared a bathroom with another staff person. I honestly don't remember if it was a male or a female. I think it was a woman. But I think she hadn't even closed the windows or opened the curtains. As soon as my friend got back from her weekend, she went and looked, and she said, she said she hasn't even been in here. Boxes of clothes and boxes of everything. She had a really nice car, and I can't remember the kind it was. but a really nice car, and I guess her brother came and got the car. The reason I wanted to get in touch with the family is because I started hearing all these rumors that the family was really weird and there was all these goofy things going on, which turned out to be absolutely not true at all. And that's why I wanted to talk to the family to find out what the heck was going on. Her mother sent me a letter. She sent me a lot of original stuff that I don't think she even kept copies of. She sent me a letter that Sheila had written while, fish sitting for her brother who lives down in California. He has this beautiful house, and she describes it and overlooking the city, and she said the fish tank, she was just loving it, and she wrote this, I think it's about a 3-page typed letter, and it told all about how she felt about things. I mean, you really get an insight into who she was with that letter, but that's also in the box I can't find. I'll find it, I know it's in my house. Knifing is up close and personal instead of like a gun or something like that. It's horrible when you think about what she must have gone through.
Yeah, and kind of hard to think about how demented and how disturbed a person has to be, because usually when there's a murderer who prefers using knives, that's a very intimate murder, and they watch, the scary thing is they usually watch the life drain out of
yeah,
the
they
victims.
like to watch that.
They get off on that. Yeah.
Now Sheila was a big girl. She was tall. She wasn't fat or anything like that. She was tall and she was strong, so she probably gave them a good fight, unless they, chloroformed her or something. I never heard that there was any damage to her skull, like a fractured skull or being hit or anything. I think she unwittingly got in a car or a truck with someone who wanted to show her something, somebody she trusted. Now, I was told that the ranger who let her use the Jackson Center, and he had to have a key to get in and do this stuff. I was told that she was quite friendly with that guy. I was also told that he wore his pants way up over his waist. That really was. Freedom of Information Act might be something that would be allowed for me to get into the files and see how much longer he was at the park when she disappeared. Because maybe he was already set to be transferred. I don't know, but it's just buzzing around in my mind because I just learned about it last night after I'd asked questions about this ranger for so long, and the video. It seemed like the video was a really big clue. Never shown up ever. And her mom didn't believe in it. She said, I don't think it's a serial killer. I don't think it's somebody who went around and around doing things like that and not getting caught. Because she said Sheila was very attracted to men. She was a very friendly girl. She was nice to everybody. I didn't meet a single person who worked in different places who didn't just love her, because she was just so much fun. And it was very deep in the emails that I sent you. You'll see she wrote about Rainier. She wrote about Isle Royale, and she wrote about Olympic, and just the feelings that she had about the part. She was quite, in her own mind, she was very deep, quite spiritual, and also just loved nature. I mean, she just did something for her and got her killed. She wanted to stay in the mountain. She said, I want to stay here, I want to be like the mountain. And of course she is. Thunder.
Well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have today. Yeah.